I like the way this feel, yeah. Let my soul cry, yeah, yeah, yeah. Minister, we gonna speak from the heart on this one. I'm performing lyrical funerals, no obituary. I killed your boy and brought him back to life, pet cemetery. My anointing not based on attendance at a seminary. Scarlet witches, they attracted to the visionary. Everywhere I go, I bring the word with me, missionary. Soldier drafted in the war machine, military. Pay attention, what I'm saying to you, legendary. You got the demeanor of a front desk secretary. That mean you take the calls, but you don't make the calls. That's why you hate, cause ain't nothing fake about me at all. Now I dare you try to say that with a straight face. My delivery in tip-top great shape. I'm too advanced for you, light years, space age. No evolution for you cavemen, stone age. I'm a thoroughbred, rock solid. I came from the bottom to the top, rock climbing. I grew up in the hood, pros and cons. That's that full court pressure when the ambulance roll out the stretcher. Why can't you see it's not logical? And you live diabolical. Boy, your point of view smaller than the hair follicle molecule. This for all of them that follow you, smoking all of them barbecue. When I pull up, your voice don't correct itself with no auto-tune. I got a whole nother level that I can enter whenever I gotta deal with the devil. I pick a whole nother method. I hear a whole lot of yapping. They wanna see my reaction. Really out here in the community making it happen. I don't really think they understand the dilemma. They ain't looking at the man in the mirror. I can't say it any clearer. The plan is very simple. It's time to start playing in the temple. Before somebody come and put the can on your temple. Reaching like a baby with his hand for the nipple. The Grim Reaper coming with his hand on the sickle. In the van coming with a ram with the van coming get him. I am so glad that I changed up. Made it out of where I came from. Watch for the slide and the hook of the slow ball, fastball, and that change up. That ghetto lifestyle, it changed us. Go back to visit, it ain't changed much. Only difference is now the way that my brain process information. And Satan, but after my license, day one, let me say something. Only reason that I'm still alive today because God's grace is amazing. Just another raisin in the sun. Dream deferred when things occurred. Now you getting served right on the curb like a lemonade stand. I just gave you the benediction, let the whole church say amen.
Peace, peace, peace. What it is Brother Tyvon Swinnell, aka the Orthodox Moor, aka the Seven Pillar Saracen, aka Brother Moor. Wishing you all peace and blessings. Yesterday, I had the distinct pleasure of being on panel with Abu and Dante on Berean TV, and we discussed a number of things. The 400-year prophecy, Dante's DNA, stuff going on with Damon, Richardson, a little bit of Ron Dalton Jr., etc. And that was amidst like a 12-hour marathon on Berean show. And so I thought I would clip that out here, show it to the people because I thought it was an interesting conversation, and see what y'all thought. Shout out to everybody involved and shout out to everybody's candor in their answering questions and whatnot. I thought it was a good conversation, and I thought it was worth checking out. So without further ado, family, I am going to share my screen. Do it like this. Definitely put up the fair use. Remind everybody if they want to see the full video, I have that link down below. Also, if you have not yet done so, please check out the link down below for the YAP Gang Scholarship channel and go subscribe to that if you have not done so already. Please hit the like button. Please share this video. Please subscribe. And with that, I'm about to hit my mute button and play this job.
All these good folk God done used, all these good black folk God done used, coming out of Jim Crow, coming out of pressure, coming out of some stuff that could be beef. Other people say, listen, if you say that, I can't trust you handling the word of God.
Show me the Holocaust in the Bible. Somebody, please show me.
It's not. Make the coalition. Why you got to see the Holocaust? If we ain't
correlation is very important. No, that ain't no diversion. It's very important. Them folks make the claim the Holocaust in the Bible. Show me where the Holocaust in the Bible.
Dunamis, is this a good line of reasoning?
It is if you were like Zionist or pro-Ashkenazi or like we were like, you know, pro 1948er, but I don't know why it keeps coming up.
Hold on a minute. Dante,
because you got things that say that your kids would be sold into slavery to another people and there would be no might in your hand. We have a correlation with that, but show me where that happened in the Holocaust.
And Timothy Isaac is going to say, show him anybody else. Hold on a minute. Dante here with the 400 years. Jordan, don't jump in. Elder Green, listen to this. Listen to this, because it seems like you teeter-totter, and this might push you over the fence. I'm going to mute you right now. Come on, Dante. I've been getting dressed, but transistor aren't going to be open in 10 minutes. I'm stuck. Go ahead. I'm muting myself.
All right, shalom, everybody. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, you want to put up your screen before I walk away? You're not in the crib.
Oh, yeah, I can pull up my screen. Give me a second. I think they changed it here. Oh, here it is. I found it.
And if any of y'all got any questions, the 400 years, that's what this is doing right now. The 400 years is the transatlantic slave trade in the Bible. Dealing with Luke, all right, here the pack, dealing with Luke, dealing with other things. Oh, wait, no, that ain't it.
Yeah, that was my screen.
Hey, how much time you got, boo?
That was
this is it.
Glad to see you here, bro.
Forever Charity, I need to put you in the back while something, what you call it? Don't start amen and don't start playing no organ. Go ahead. Good, man.
All right. So if we
there it is.
If we consider all slaveries, just all of them, let's separate it right now from being Israel or anybody else. If we just consider all slaveries, and then we take the important points, we can actually eliminate a lot of different slaveries that people bring up. And we find that the transatlantic slave trade is going to be the only one left that specifically fits a lot of it. So if we started Genesis 15:13, this is the 400 years. And he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve, I will judge, and afterward shall they come out with great substance. And so when people talk about the 400 years, a lot of people immediately jump to that we were supposed to leave after 400 years, but that's not what Genesis says. It says he will judge the nation, and then afterward people will come out. So there's an order of events. There's the slavery and oppression in a land that's not theirs, and then there will be the judgment, and then they will come out with great substance. So
there ain't no date on coming out. There ain't no date on coming out. And don't say nowhere say that.
No. I don't believe there's a date on coming out, because we still have to see the judgment. And even in some aspects of dispensationalist Christianity, people disagree, or some agree and some disagree on whether or not that period is 7 years, the tribulation versus the great tribulation. So people have differing opinions on how long judgment itself will last, but we're supposed to see judgment start. And I've never believed that judgment was instant. I've always believed that judgment was over a period of time, because I'm a dispensationalist, even though I don't agree with 100% of every point of the dispensationalist point of view. So we should see judgment happen. But that time of 400 years given to Abraham. Now, some people will say that's Egypt. Well, if that's the case, then you're saying that 400 years was really 430 years. Now, if you're going to take that approach with it applying to Egypt, you also have to take that approach with it anywhere else it's applied. So if nothing happens right at 400, you still have to say, well, I allowed 430 for this one for the prophecy to still be true. So you have to allow 430 for the next one. That's not my whole point, though. If we skip forward, we can see that in Deuteronomy 28, slavery is prophesied. I don't know of anybody who will say that slavery is not in Deuteronomy 28, and some people will say it's not prophecy. But right here, the Lord shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. This is after Egypt. If anybody disagrees, this is after or disagrees with the time period that Deuteronomy was written after they came out of Egypt, press 1 in the chat if you disagree with that time frame. So we know there has to be a 400-year slavery, whether it applies to Egypt or not. We'll say, okay, Egypt is still on the table. Now, this right here in Deuteronomy, these blessings and curses, again, people will say it's not prophecy. But if we come over to Deuteronomy 29, after they finish with the terms and conditions, I call Deuteronomy 28 terms and conditions. We come to Deuteronomy 29. This is where everybody accepts, not just Israel, but the strangers too. And I believe the strangers are non-Israelites. That's my personal view on it. So I don't believe that everybody in the transatlantic slave trade was Israel. I do believe that some other nations got caught up in the transatlantic slave trade as part of this broken covenant. So in Deuteronomy 29, they accept the covenant. If you come over to Deuteronomy chapter 30, it starts off verses 1 through 5 say, and it shall come to pass when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse which I have set before thee. We know he's talking about Deuteronomy 28 because it's the order of events. And thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations whither the Lord thy God hath driven thee, and shall return unto the Lord thy God, and shall obey his voice according to all that I command thee this day, thou and thy children with all thy heart, with all thy soul, that then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity and have compassion upon thee, and will return and gather thee from all the nations whither the Lord thy God hath scattered thee. So once these things happen in Deuteronomy 28 and they turn back to the Most High, he's going to return and gather them from all the nations where they have been scattered. So you guys can read that whole thing. And if you go over to Deuteronomy 31, Moses tells us very clearly, he says, for I know that after my death, you will utterly corrupt yourselves and turn aside from the way which I have commanded you, and evil will befall you in the latter days. So he's tying this to the latter days, because you will do evil in the sight of the Lord and to provoke him to anger through the work of your hands. So Moses is tying the covenant in Deuteronomy 28 to an evil that will befall them in the latter days. And part of that covenant was to go into slavery by a nation whose speech they don't understand. Now, if somebody can show me anywhere in history that fits, then we can look at that event and say, okay, this was an event right here where people were taken into slavery because they disobeyed God, and God brought this upon them. Now, it's talking about Israel. So all the slaveries we can eliminate are slaveries where people do not claim to be Israelites. All that's gone. Irish, that's gone. That wasn't even slavery. That was indentured servitude, which is different than the chattel slavery that happened similar to Egypt. So you have this right here tells us that Deuteronomy 28 is a prophecy. It clearly says the evil will befall you in the latter days. Now, for those of you who don't agree, Jeremiah, over here in Jeremiah chapter 5, if we come down and we read really the whole thing, we can start right here, verses 15, and we'll go through 19. And the reason I bring up Jeremiah, because some people will say that what happened in Genesis was already fulfilled. Some people say that Deuteronomy 28 is not prophecy, even though we see the progression from Deuteronomy chapter 28, 29, 30, and then finally in 31, where Moses says this will occur in the latter days. Jeremiah ties both Deuteronomy and Genesis together. He says, lo, I will bring a nation upon you from far. That's similar to what the wording was in Deuteronomy. The Lord will bring a nation against thee from far. It says, it is a mighty, saith the Lord, it is a mighty nation. It is an ancient nation, a nation whose language thou knowest not, neither understandest what they say. We saw that in Deuteronomy 28 over here. It says, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. So even though it's not worded exactly the same, Jeremiah says the nation is going to come from afar, and it's going to be a nation whose tongue they do not understand. So if Jeremiah is prophecy, that would make this section of Deuteronomy 28 prophecy as well, because either they're talking about the same event or they're talking about two different events. And when we keep reading, it says, their quivers and open sepulchre, they are all mighty men, and they shall eat up thine harvest and thy bread, which thy sons and thy daughters should eat. They shall eat up thy flocks and thine herds. They shall eat up thy vines and thy fig trees. They shall impoverish thy fenced cities wherein thou trustest with the sword. Now, Deuteronomy 28 says something similar right here in verse 51. And he shall eat up the fruit of thy cattle and the fruit of thy land until thou be destroyed, which also shall not leave thee either corn, wine, or increase of kine, flocks, sheep, until he have destroyed thee. So again, the wording is not exact, but the wording is very similar. So if Jeremiah is a prophecy, it makes that section of Deuteronomy 28 also prophecy. But if we keep coming down here, nevertheless, in those days, saith the Lord, I will not make a full end with you. And it shall come to pass when ye shall say, wherefore or why doeth the Lord our God all these things unto us? Then shalt thou answer them, like as ye have forsaken me and served strange gods in your land, so shall ye serve strangers in a land that is not yours. So if we come back over here to Genesis 15, what did he tell Abraham? They shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs and shall serve them. So either Jeremiah and Abraham are talking about two different events, or they're talking about the same event. Now, if you want to say that this right here in Genesis applies specifically to Egypt, then you have to tell me, where do the events in Jeremiah, where does that apply to in history? Because Jeremiah combines parts of Deuteronomy 28 with the phrase from Genesis chapter 15. Now, if we come over to Luke 21, when Christ is asked about the end times, he doesn't just make these things up. He gives stuff from the Old Testament specifically. And in verse 22, he says, for these be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written may be fulfilled. So the thing that was written at his time was the Old Testament. So when he's talking in the Olivet Discourse and they're asking for the signs of his coming, the things that he's talking about are Old Testament things that have to be fulfilled. And those things are from Genesis, from Deuteronomy, from Jeremiah, and from other parts of the Bible. It says, but woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days, for there shall be great distress in the land, and wrath upon this people, and they shall fall by the edge of the sword. That is from Deuteronomy. If you go through Deuteronomy 28, one of the curses is they would be pursued by the sword. It says, and shall be led away captive into all nations. Again, that's part of Deuteronomy 28. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So there's supposed to be two things happening according to Christ. There's supposed to be a worldwide slavery, some nation, which are Israelites, led captive into all nations. That's slavery, servitude, however you want to define the word captive. They have to be led captive into all nations. And then another group called the Gentiles have to trodden down Jerusalem until their time is fulfilled. So Israelites going to slavery, Gentiles in Jerusalem, which is why we cannot eliminate the fact that Ashkenaz is named in Genesis chapter 10 as part of the line of Japheth, even though people like to run with that scenario that somehow Israel just started calling themselves Ashkenaz, and they have no historical sources to support this that I've ever seen. I've never seen anywhere in history that Israel started to identify themselves as Ashkenaz. Now, they can be converts, fine. I have no problem with converts. I'm not one of them people that believe that they can't be converts. But if they're converts, let's say that. And then right here, and there shall be signs in the sun, the moon, the stars, and upon the earth, distress of nations with perplexity, the seas and waves roaring. So that's coming from Joel chapter 3 and several other chapters. But the fact is, Christ said that a worldwide slavery would be one of the signs of his, or before his coming. So now we have a timeline. This worldwide slavery we're looking for, the one talked about in Deuteronomy 28 that people say isn't prophecy, this worldwide slavery has to occur after the time of Christ and before his coming. And if we look at it historically, there is no other slavery that fits worldwide other than the transatlantic slave trade. People try to fit other slaveries into it, but again, led captive into all nations. That is a key. It has to be all nations, or it does not fit the prophecy. Now we have to look at a series of coincidences. HR 1242, 400 Years of African American History Commission Act. Now, whether you agree with the timing or not, it's either a very huge coincidence or it's something that God was talking about in the Bible. We know, I think we all agree that Black people from West Africa were moved to a land that was not theirs by a people whose language they did not know. So they were brought over to America. And then coincidentally, if we believe it's a coincidence, HR 42 talks about right here. So this bill establishes the 400 Years of African American History Commission to develop and carry out activities throughout the United States to commemorate the 400th anniversary of the arrival of Africans in the English colonies at Point Comfort, Virginia in 1619. Now, Congress is giving it a date of 400 years. Either that is coincidence or it's not. The same people who are now claiming to be Israel were brought to a land that is not theirs by a people whose language they did not know, and those people are acknowledging a 400-year period tied directly to it. Now, let's move into what's supposed to happen at the end of the 400 years. In the beginning, I established it's 400 years of slavery and oppression, not just slavery. And oppression is use of the law to basically oppress a specific people. It has nothing to do with how much money you make, has nothing to do if you're a millionaire or own a house. It has nothing to do with oppression. It's slavery and oppression for 400 years. And at the end of that 400 years, we're supposed to see judgment begin, judgment of some kind begin. So now this 400-year Commission Act has to be a coincidence. The amount of Black people in America from West Africa and all over the other countries, because not just in America, but at it has to be, those people have to be claiming to be Israelites. So that would have to be a coincidence as well. And then if you come over to the CDC timeline, at the end of that 400-year period, we start to see something interesting. Now, this is directly from the CDC.gov, Center for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC Museum COVID-19 timeline. December 12, 2019, a cluster of patients in China's Hubei province in the city of Wuhan began to experience the symptoms of an atypical pneumonia-like illness that does not respond well to standard treatments. December 31st, very last day of 2019, very last day of what some people believe the 400 years, World Health Organization, or WHO, country office in China is informed of several cases of a pneumonia, unknown etiology or cause, with symptoms including shortness of breath, fever occurring in Wuhan, China. All initial cases seem connected to the Hunan seafood wholesale market. So the World Health Organization is notified on the last day of that 400-year period. Now, some people will say, well, that has nothing to do with the 400 years. But are you sure it is that a coincidence that something, a worldwide pandemic was reported at the very end of the 400 years? Either there's something to it or there's absolutely nothing to it, and it's coincidence along with all these other things. Now, some people say we've had these other things occur, the Black Plague and all that. A lot of that took place in Europe and Asia with the Black Plague. COVID is the only event that I know of where there is a worldwide coordinated effort to lock everything down and come up with a solution, because COVID wiped out millions of people. I don't know what the official number is right now, but again, this is not my whole presentation. I have a video on my channel where I go through a lot more stuff, but I'm just giving you guys a condensed version. Either all these things are a series of coincidences or there is something to it. And to me, somebody would have to prove to me beyond a shadow of a doubt that everything is coincidence and God does not have his hand in the happenings that we're seeing going on the planet right now.
Okay, now people are saying Dante laying it out. Sister saying she connecting the dots. Is there anybody that disagree with what they heard? Abu, you disagree with what you heard? Alton, put what you said in there. How can the scattering, because a lot of this is because this would be cleared up if a few people had videos out explaining Luke 21. It would be that simple. It would be that simple. But y'all, this don't mean nothing. Only stupid people gonna go for this, but y'all don't got videos explaining Luke 21. And is Jesus lying? Did it happen already? What was he talking about? Scattering. That don't make no difference because Christianity is here now. Some of us speaking in tongues. This could have been avoided. Go ahead, Abu. You wanted to say something that I think you might have. And if y'all got questions, put it in right now. Where y'all do not understand how he's using Luke and what's being said. Go ahead, Abu. I'm mute myself.
Good morning and happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And good morning to Dante, and thank you for coming on. What I would say is that there's a number of questions that remain. Like for me, when exploring specifically the Amerocentric interpretation of Genesis 15, my question has always been one about falsifiability. Under what conditions would one concede that starting the count in 1619 was mistaken? What I got from this, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, is that the timeline is incredibly open-ended and there doesn't seem to be an upper limit. Like hypothetically speaking, if current conditions continue all the way to the year 2100 or 2200, because it's so open-ended, one could say, well, that doesn't mean starting the count in 1619 was mistaken. But if it's that open-ended, it does sort of beg the question of why not push the count earlier? Why not start the count in the 1500s? Or, for example, if now Luke is being mixed into this, the question of whether or not all nations is literal might ask questions about like Iraq or other places where like slavery has occurred. And you could ask the question, well, then why not start the count in the 9th century and just say that, the process from the end of the 400 years to that judgment has been, I don't know, millennia, more than a millennium. It seems like my issue is that it's so open-ended that it becomes, and I don't mean this disrespectfully, but it becomes too vague to assess the accuracy of the interpretation.
So when people say, well, nobody gonna be, who else was scattered like that? You do agree Jesus was talking to Israel in Luke 21, right, Abu? Now, do me a favor, don't email me now later on, scholars in the comment section, if y'all want to jump on right now to say, no, I don't agree, based on this and that, please do. Go ahead, Abu, what you saying?
No, go ahead. You were speaking.
No, I'm saying, so you say it's too vague. And when they ask
specifically the U.S.-centric interpretation of Genesis 15, which starts the count at specifically 1619, that is becoming, because it's so open-ended as to what is supposed to happen precisely, because there's no sort of way to falsify it, because it's so open-ended in terms of the upper end of the count. It seems to me that this could just continue on forever, and people could just, because it's kept so vague, they could say, well, that doesn't disprove it, because there's no agreed upon way to falsify it. It seems it's nigh impossible to assess the accuracy of it.
Okay, anybody
I got
else?
a response for that.
Okay, hold on.
Can I speak? Can I speak,
No,
brother?
you can't. No, you can't, brother. You've been waiting. You're gonna wait till we bring you to the floor. It's okay. Answer the question. Who else was scattered to every nation? Here, Buddy Brew, right here. I said I was gonna block him. Here you go, right here. Listen. Who else, Christianity? Y'all must answer this question in order to stop these black line fake Israelite. What do you call them, FBI? Y'all gotta answer these questions. Don't come in here and act like you don't have to answer or just laugh in the corner. You gotta answer these questions, period. Or y'all are gonna allow the deception to go on. Go ahead, Dante. I mute myself.
All right, to answer Abu's question, the reason we go with 1619 is because that is the commonly acknowledged date, and I don't believe God is pointing to any vague events throughout the Bible. God says he alone knows the end from the beginning. He tells the end from the beginning, and he will do all his pleasure. So when we see something as specific as a 400-year mention in Genesis into a land that is not theirs, and people who don't speak their language, we have to look at all occurrences of that, because we know that when Israel came into Egypt, they chose Goshen, to live in Goshen. And what's interesting is if you continue reading Genesis chapter 15 around verse 18, I believe it is, he gives the boundary lines of the land of Israel. It's from the river of Egypt to the Euphrates. So it'd be the Nile to the Euphrates. And people often don't consider that when they say, look, Israel's back in the land. Well, that's not the amount of land he promised them. That is a small sliver of a section of the totality of the land promised them. So when they're in slavery in Egypt, in Goshen, they are literally in their land. He said they have to be slaves in a land that is not theirs, and that cannot be overlooked. So we have to take into account all portions of prophecy when we look at it, and we can't just ignore what we don't want to see and then add in things that we do want to see. So no, Israel is not back in the land right now. They're in a small portion of it. But as I went over before in Deuteronomy 20, on Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 3, it says that then the Lord thy God will turn thy captivity and have compassion on thee, and will return and gather thee from all nations. That's what we have to see. Israel first has to be scattered into all nations, and then that has to happen in order for God to return them or gather them from all nations. It says, whether the Lord thy God hath scattered thee. So we know the scattering has to happen first, and then the return has to happen. And that's what Christ is talking about, a worldwide slavery event after his time that would ultimately lead to the regathering of Israel, the second coming. Or I'll say that's part of the second coming. It's not the totality of the second coming. But that's why we
hold on, I'm sorry,
16.
Don. He's saying, Dante, stop lying. Israel was slaves to Egypt. Jesus is talking after the resurrection. After the death, burial, and resurrection was something to physically happen to Egypt, Tony Osborne.
Now, I didn't say Israel wasn't slaves. And see, that's where Tony is lying. I never said Israel wasn't slaves to the Egyptians. I said we have to consider all captivities. And if it's referring to that captivity, Israel was in Goshen, and Goshen was part of the land promise. Everything west of the Nile and east of the Euphrates was what was promised. And Goshen is east of the Nile. It falls within their land. So they were enslaved in their own land promised to them by God in the same chapter.
Oh, okay. He said he apologized. All right, because yes, that was that. Maybe he had his timeline wrong. All right, Ella Green. Anybody else want to Dunamis, you want to say something? Because I know these organists right here. Tony, Timothy, Isaac, and Jordan ain't nothing but organists. Now, don't say I let Israel run amok. Don't y'all get on here and say I let Israel run amok. Because y'all are being challenged. And just like y'all see Damon came on here and was talking that talk, y'all in Christianity, y'all are being challenged to explain, if it wasn't the 400 years, what was Jesus talking about after he had disciples? Because a little bit after this, we say Christianity was birthed. So what happened after Christianity was birthed to the people that he was talking to, that a whole bunch of them was bloodline? Is that fear, or that's devil worship? Or that's helping in the awakening and the fake black Israelites? It's just a stupid question. Go ahead. Go ahead, Ella Green. I'm you myself.
Yeah, sure. I guess I'm going back to trying to.
Yeah, don't you switch it up, because Dante here and he just explained that, and that sounds good to you. You don't say you see the do. Well, I can't tell you. I'm sorry. I'm getting that. No. Do you see it now? I'm sorry.
No. I don't see it. And the way the brother laid it out, I think, and I can't put words in his mouth. I wasn't there. I don't know him. I've heard his name mentioned, but the way he presented that, the way he presented it, it was a good presentation. But I don't think the way he presented it was like he was trying to put a nail in a coffin with it. You know what I mean? I don't think he presented it like that. It seemed like he's the type of guy that, a gentleman elder, that he has his information, has his studies, but he's not saying okay, like myself. I can't speak. I'm gonna speak for myself. I can't speak for me personally. Deuteronomy 28, and I said it from day one since I come on this show. Deuteronomy 28 is not my go-to. It's not my go-to verse. It's not my go-to material or scriptures. The 400 slave trade is not my go-to. Now, when you asked me earlier, do I think the 400 is in the scripture? My answer is still the same. I don't see it, because you know why I don't see it word for word? Because you got so many. See, I'm gonna only get up here and say what. Let me do this. I don't like it. What I can prove. Like, okay, like right now. I'm up there. I'm not gonna get up here and say something and share something. I feel like I can't prove it. I'm not the type of guy that's gonna try to make a clown of myself and say something that I feel like I can't prove. So you're not gonna get up. I'm not gonna say that Deuteronomy 28 is the go-to for me, because that wasn't the go-to for me when I learned who I was. It is not the go-to for me now. I'm not gonna say the 400 years. I shared earlier how I received the 400 years. I receive it as I think it was 16, 19, and 400 years spiritual slavery being lifted off, because clearly ain't nothing happened physically that I can see, me personally. But now, even before that, that's not my go-to. Now, one of many reasons is this reason right here. Let me share this. Let me share this very quick.
Commentary on Torah, okay. And Abu, did you tell me how much time you got? Because Dante's here right now. I'm gonna ask him his thoughts on Damon. Well, we kind of got an idea his thoughts on Damon Richardson coming on, and this is a good time to segue into that DNA Israel Levant and see what we can do right there. You got 5 minutes.
An overlap between Dante and Matthew.
I'm not going to take too much long. I'm not taking 5 minutes. Okay. Now, out of this book, on the Deuteronomy 28, verse 68. Now, if this book is wrong, then I'm sorry that I'm sharing something wrong. I mean, I'm sharing something wrong, and I got more than one source here that's going to say what this is saying. So this is all I can do. All I can do is sit at the feet of the one that put label out here. You know what I'm saying? And here we go. So here we go. On the Deuteronomy 28, verse 68, it says, "Back to Egypt. For the last curse of this list of horrors, what would be the worst threat specifically for the people of Israel back to Egypt? This nightmare comes true 700 years later, after the Babylonian destruction of Jerusalem, described at the end of the book of Kings." Then it has, the little dots there. Then it has in quotation, "All the people from the smallest to the biggest, ... that mean continue, got up and came to Egypt." Then it has 2 Kings 25, 26. Then it has Jeremiah 43, 44 through 7. And they had these as scripture verses as reference. Watch, here we go. Oh, yeah, but it says, came to Egypt. Okay, here we go. The last curse is that they would go back to Egypt. And the last page of the book of Kings reports that the entire people go back to Egypt. Okay, now that's one source. Let me read one more again. Let me read something else. And this is going to come out of, here we go, the Haftorah. The Haftorah. Hey, all I can do is this here. Out of Deuteronomy 28, verse 68, it says, bringing thee back into Egypt. A culminating calamity. God repeals the prohibition mentioned in, I think that must be saying 17:16, Deuteronomy 17:16, had Roman numbers there, and they will be returned to Egypt to the degradation of their erstwhile. I'm sorry, my bad.
I gotta step downstairs for a minute. I'll be back in 3 minutes. Y'all keep going.
Okay, good. Okay. Egyptian serfdom. At the destruction of Jerusalem by the Romans, both Titus and Hadrian consigned multitude of Jews into slavery, and Egypt received a large portion of those slaves. And it has in ships in parentheses. They came forth from Egypt, 600,000 men on foot, and displaced a disciplined host of free warriors, but would be carried thither or thither, cooped up in slave ships. The Romans had a fleet in the Mediterranean, and this was an easier and safer way of transporting prisoners than by land across the desert. Now, one more source, and I'm gonna close after this. Josephus. The Bible said 2 to 3 witnesses. Here we go. That's why that's why me personally, I don't hold to the Deuteronomy 28. Here we go. I'm gonna read Josephus out of Antiquities. This is like book 12, like chapter 2, number 28. It says, its contents were as follows: let all those who were soldiers under our fathers, and when they overran Syria and Phoenicia and laid waste Judea, took the Jews captives and made them slaves and brought them into our cities and into this country, and then sold them, as also were those that were in my kingdom before them. And there be, if there be any that have been lately brought there, y'all, I'm sorry, I'm trying to read it. Be made free by those possess them, and let for every slave, I'm sorry, them except 120 drachmas for every slave, and let the soldiers receive this redemption money with their pay, but the rest out of the king's treasury. For I suppose that they were made captives without our father's consent, and against equity. And
So
that
you say, oh, this is Luke, is the prophecy that Josephus spoke that happened shortly after, not 2000, not 1600 years. Is that what you're saying?
I'm almost finished. Y'all know I get talking fast, I get stuttering, so y'all gotta bear with me. And that
y'all gotta make sense and say what you're saying. I want to reading. Come on here, reading. Say what you're saying in the end. Go ahead. I'm
gonna say what I'm saying at the end. And that their country was harassed by the insolence of the soldiers, that by removing them into Egypt, the soldiers have made a great profit by them. So now this is my take. This is why I don't hold to Deuteronomy 28 is my go-to as me being Israel, as you know, that's been my take from day one. I don't hold to it. That's not my go-to. Now, like I said earlier, when you asked that question, and I still hold to my answer, I can't say that there's nowhere encoded in the scriptures that Israel. I can't safely sit here and say that, because I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Something may be there and something may not be there. But you're not going to get me to go to bat for either side of it. I'm not going to do that. But to ask me a question like that, and I give the best answer I could based on stuff that's people that brought out that's coded, and when I see the language and I see how they did that, now somebody may say, well, that's made up. Well, that's some interesting made up stuff, how they bound them letters like that, and they just spell out this. It's interesting. So that's my answer, Berean. Y'all know that's
all right. Thank you so much.
I have a response, Berean, before we move on. Shout out to
okay, all right, and then I'm gonna let Timothy Isaac read the scripture, because I know you just want to read scripture and then ask who else and all that other stuff. And like I said, I want to ask you about that other thing, and we'll go straight into the DNA. Maybe you can briefly address the two things that Damon Richardson said. Go ahead. That's Elder Green, you mean, or just in general?
Yeah. No, I respect Elder Green's position on that. Now I want to show you guys something that has to do with what we're talking about, and it kind of ties into what Jordan was talking about people trying to apply some of these prophecies to the 1948 people. And hold on,
let me click you. Yeah. Let me click the screen because I gotta walk away.
Let me see. There you go. All right, so this comes from Universal History Americanized, or a historical view of the world from the earliest records to the year 1808, with particular reference to the state of society, literature, religion, and form of government in the United States of America, Volume 1, by David Ramsey. This was published in 1819. Now, this is, again, published in 1819. I'm going to start reading up here, but where I want to get to is further down the page. It says, but the sacred page has clearly opened a source of consolation to those who are anxiously waiting for the redemption of Israel. An inspired apostle has assured us that the Jews, the natural branches of the olive tree, now this was written during slavery by a European, though now broken off by unbelief, will be grafted in again and participate with the Gentiles in the blessings resulting from faith in the Messiah. And he's talking about the 1948 people. A review of the preceding history of the Jews exhibits to the attentive reader in such a striking manner the exact accomplishment of the famous prophecy of Moses, Deuteronomy 28. So this was written by a European during slavery, just to show you guys that the interpretation of Deuteronomy 28 as prophecy and applying to this period of history did not start with Israelites or camps. It started before then. It says that this chapter appears to be a correct miniature picture of the leading features in their history, drawn by the pencil of inspiration. The devout must feel an augmented veneration for the sacred scriptures, while they observe the complete agreement of ancient prophecies with events more than 2,000 years subsequent. So they're saying that this was prophecy. Skepticism and infidelity must be confounded by seeing the history of succeeding ages so accurately delineated in predictions uttered 10 centuries before the birth of the Savior. Among many predictions in which this coincidence is strikingly evident, the following deserve to be noticed. Among other awful denunciations against the Jewish nation, Moses declares, Deuteronomy 28, verse 29, "Thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore." Numerous instances occur of the cruel oppressions and pillages this devoted race have suffered in England, France, Germany, and Spain. In the East, as well as in Europe, they have been continually subjected to heavy fines and impositions. In different countries, they have been often forced to redeem their lives by vast sums extorted from them. And then it goes on to break down Deuteronomy 28 even more, but it is talking about, it goes into them being called a byword. Talks about Christians, Mohammedans, which are Muslims. It's still, this whole thing breaks down Deuteronomy 28, and it says they have been breaking it down this way since the 1600s if we continue reading, but I don't want to read this whole thing. But I did want to share that. I can drop a link in the chat, I think, for you guys, but you guys can read that. But yeah, it basically.
So I'm sorry, but hold on. So Alton is saying you're reading British Israelism.
Again, my point was that they have tried to apply this to Jews, and they did interpret it as prophecy. So some people are saying, you know, this is Israelite doctrine. People didn't interpret it this way until the Israelites came along. But I did want to point out that no, this has been around for a while, that people believed that Deuteronomy 28 was prophecy, and it did apply to modern times. But now that we're saying it, suddenly people are saying, no, that's not prophecy. You guys created this. This is camp doctrine. I've seen people say the most stuff, but then when we look at history, it's just not true.
Okay, so all right, so Alton, you heard that, right? But you're saying it's a talking point stolen. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
No,
Alton.
no, I'm just pointing out.
I'm talking about Alton. I don't know if Alton's saying it. But that was for Elder Green. All right, Timothy Isaac, you wanted to read a scripture?
No, sir. I just wanted to make a comment. And grace and peace to you, Brother Berean, and grace and peace to the panel. Brother Dante, that was an excellent presentation, and much respect to you, Elder Green. When you mentioned about the ships and coming from Rome, going back into Egypt, the problem that I have is in Deuteronomy 28:64, it says, "And the Lord shall scatter thee among all people from one end of the earth unto the other, and thou shalt serve other gods." Just like Christ prophesied in Luke, where we would be scattered into all nations. When you read your book, and it didn't say anything about Israel being scattered into all nations. That's just the problem I have with that part of your presentation. Also, I wanted to say that it's and Brother Berean, and this is no disrespect to you, we're having great conversations, but it seems to me that Israel is always put on trial. Israel is always have to prove something, and I don't see that energy going to other nations. I just don't see it. I don't see it going toward the Roman Catholic. I don't see it going toward the Christian church. It's just, and I guess, like you say, but I appreciate the conversation. But when Israel is on trial, it's always that we have to prove who we are and not believe it by faith. And that's the problem I have. But I'm gonna tell you one reason why I do come on your show, bro, your channel, is because I believe that most of the people in your chat are Israel. That's why I come. That's why I pour out my spirit on this channel, because I believe that the people that we're talking to right now that don't know who they are, that possibly could be Israel. That's why I come on your channel and speak my piece. And it's not to bang on anyone, it's not to hate anyone, but I have a love for my father, his son, and my people. So that's why I basically come on here and let my feelings know and let my spirit be presented. And that's just what that's just part of what I just had to say.
Can I
Elder
Berean real quick?
Elder Berean, can I respond to Brother Timothy very quick? I ain't gonna be long. Can I respond to Brother Timothy?
Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead. But I want to get on this. I want to get on that. I want to get on this. Go ahead.
But Brother Timothy, that's your name, right? Elder Timothy?
Yes, sir.
Okay, yeah. Well, you ain't gotta say yeah, but yes, sir. But yeah, I appreciate what you shared, and just definitely keep this in mind, brother. What I read was what I read. I don't know if the authors could have put more in there than what they put in the book as far as being shipped to not only Egypt but other places. But I do know they quoted those two sources for sure. Josephus just quoted it in the history of it, but he didn't mention those sources meant Deuteronomy, and they mentioned Deuteronomy. So all I did was just quoted what they mentioned, and these are Hebrew, sources. But now they could have put more in that commentary, as far as other places than Egypt. But now, one thing, like I said before, and it goes back to the initial question that was asked to me. I'm not going to, and let me say this to you too, brother. You ain't got to prove, and I don't think Berean, I can't speak for Berean, but you ain't got to, and I know when I say this ain't giving you no pass. You're not gonna leave here feeling like you charged because Elder Green said this. But I'm gonna say this in front of everybody. You ain't got to prove yourself to nobody. See, that's why I ain't got to take no blood test. I leave that for people that want to do. You ain't got to, and I know you don't have to. So don't take it like I'm telling you something that you're gonna leave here like, yeah, I ain't got to prove myself now because that ain't even what I mean. That ain't even my flavor. I don't have to go to Deuteronomy to prove nothing. I don't have to go to translate it to prove nothing. I didn't start out proving that. I didn't start off that way, and I'm not going to end that way. I know who I am. I know my ancestors was at the foot of the mountain receiving the Torah in our DNA before I was even born. I'm fully persuaded of that. So I don't have to prove nothing to nobody. That's how free I am. I've never had to prove nothing. Even when I went into some of the light bottle synagogues, sometimes I'm the only one in there. The only one in there. I ain't had to prove nothing to nobody. All I say is, I don't have no problem with including. Just make sure you don't try to exclude. That's all I say. So my brother, hold your head up. The only thing that concerns me, if I may say it like this, not about you personally, what concerns me is if our brothers and our sisters, if they want to call it awakening, woke, whatever, if they are awakening and coming awoke and don't got the doctrine right, first of all, about Messiah, about salvation being for all, that's what you're gonna drive. That's what you're gonna see me drive home about. I won't, as far as this subject right here, I don't get into blood thing, I don't get into Deuteronomy 28 thing because I can't prove those things. But one thing I can prove is that the Messiah was miraculously born. I can prove that salvation is for all people, period. So those are the things that I listen for when coming from my brothers and coming from my sisters. All this other stuff, I'll let y'all hang out with that because this ain't a salvation thing. This ain't a salvation thing. The other things are concerned. Okay. So I just lean back on that. So.
All right, I got a response.
All right, come on, don't.
Alton asked where.
But Alton, Alton? Wait a minute, what Alton got to do? We're trying to get to the DNA.
He posted his comment up, and he asked where the African sources.
Yes.
Yes. This source covers the history up to 1865, when slavery
during those
abolished.
screen up.
I just shared it right now. All right, so this is going to cover up to 1865 during the abolition of slavery. This is West African countries and peoples, British and native, with the requirements necessary for establishing that recommended by the Committee of the House of Commons, 1865, and the vindication of the African race. Now, this is an African source, James Africanus Bill Horton, Horton, also known as James Beale, was a Creole African nationalist, writer, and esteemed medical surgeon in the British Army from Freetown, Sierra Leone. That's in Africa. Africanus was a surgeon, a scientist, soldier, political thinker, and worked towards African independence a century before it occurred. And if we come over here and we read this, well, let's start right here. It says, well might a writer in the African Times, when writing on the subject of black, the original color of the white race, finish his article with the following addenda. The Isthmus of Suez plays an important part in the history of Africa and the Ethiopian race. Ancient mythology has proved that through it, extensive migratory movements took place several thousand years ago from Asia Minor to Africa. From a little study of the ethnology of the language, Western Africa, and the Hebrew tongue, one is involuntarily brought to trace out a similarity in one of them to that of the tribes which, from disobedience to the will of God, were dispersed, and the greatest number of them possibly went to Africa. I mean the lost tribes of Israel. If the rites and ceremonies of the religion of the tribes bordering on the banks of the river Niger be closely examined and compared with the religion of the Hebrews at their earliest period, viz. The Igbo or Heber, if the Igbo or Heber language with all its corruptions be compared with that of the Hebrews, and if the peculiar disposition of the Hebrew tribes as detailed in scripture, that of the Igbos be properly investigated, there will be a priori of reasons for a serious inquiry whether the Igbo tribe, which is but a branch of the Gala tribe in the interior, is the offspring of the lost tribes of Israel, driven from Central Africa and forced to cross the eastern Banu branch of the Niger by Mohammedan or Islamic fanaticism. And before that, he goes into the history of the scattering of Israel up here from 70 AD, starting at this page right here. He goes into it from 70 AD, them being scattered into North Africa, then being forced into Central Africa, and then down into Southern Africa and the coast of the West Africa. And he specifically names the Igbo, but he is an African source to answer Alton's question.
All right, Abu, how much time you got? I want Dante to go right into it with the DNA. I want to ask him specifically with his DNA and on the video that he stated. Dante, you do believe that there are Ashkenazi Jews that's connected to you, and you're connected to them?
I believe there are some, because if you watch my whole video, I read an article from one of the professors from Huddersfield University, and he pointed out that in his study that the majority of Ashkenazi descend from converts, and not all of them are bloodline. But I do acknowledge that yes, some could be. DNA clearly points to that.
All right, y'all heard that. All right, Abu, you recently, I don't know how long ago was that, you dropped a video talking about Dante's DNA.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I agree with
I want you to touch on some of that, because I know you said you don't have a lot of time, and then I'll ask him about the two statements and the challenge that Damon Richardson made in light of before he dropped that 3-hour video. Two questions on the Ashkenazi and the 13th tribe, that they're not bloodline on that. And the second question is on West Africa. And is anybody over here? Is anybody over here? You hear me, Sister Cherry? Those are two things. Damon Richard, y'all can't go making statements and then go run off into the wind, gallivant off into the wind without responding to the stuff. That's what we're saying over here. Nobody, I don't care about trying to help no awakening. I ain't Israel. I ain't never finna claim no Israel. But we got to put it on the table. We got to put it on the table. I think it's funny Richardson ain't answered yet. You can't move like that on the internet with folk talking and stuff going on. That's how I feel, Sister Cherry. Make sure you answer that. We're talking about the DNA. Abu is in here. Orthodox Moors in here. I'm going to play them Genesis 49 video. We're going to look at that. Then we go to West Africa. Make sure you answer that, Sister Cherry. I'm dragging you in this. Why? Because I got the video queued up with you and Richardson. Nobody else doing it like you and Vocab. No, you doing more videos than Faithful, and we gonna make sure we put it out there. That West African thing and that peer-reviewed article from Wayne State University, that's on the table right now. Dante's DNA. Go ahead, Abu.
There's a lot to unpack there. What I would say first off is I agree with what Dante just said. One thing I want to say preliminarily, though, is that I always say that if we're going to have these discussions about who is an Israelite and who isn't, we have to start by clarifying what our definition of Israelite is. So just for the sake of clarity, while this isn't a definition I hold to in general, I'm moving forward, assuming we're holding to a patrilineal definition of Israelite here. If others disagree, feel free to let me know. But just moving forward, I'm assuming that's the context of this discussion. If that's the context of this discussion, then yes, I've said, I have a couple of videos saying I think Dante, obviously we can't say anything definitively, but I think the odds are very much in favor of Dante. But the argument that would be made for Dante would also make room for roughly 15% of Ashkenazim. So on the model that I have in mind here, I would wind up agreeing with Dante that you can make a case for perhaps somewhere 15% or less of the Ashkenazi spectrum has a decent chance of descending patrilineally from Jacob, and then the rest, without any sort of disrespect intended towards the other 85+%, the rest would be the patrilineal descendants of converts. And again, no disrespect intended.
Converts. So, all right. So, Kasai is a convert. So, those aren't bloodline people.
Well, you got to be careful what I mean by bloodline. They're not patrilineal descendants. Like a point that I've made over and over again is that when you look at the Ashkenazi spectrum, there's no haplogroup that has a majority amongst them, right? And this has been brought out in close to a half dozen different studies. So whatever haplogroup you could pick any haplogroup and say, all right, we're going to assume that's Jacob's haplogroup. Whatever haplogroup you choose, it could be J1, it could be 1B, 1B, whatever. Whichever one you pick, only a minority of Ashkenazim are going to have that haplogroup. So it invariably leads to the conclusion that a majority do not descend from Jacob patrilineally. Now, as far as which haplogroup we're going to side with, me personally, I mean, I admit my full fallibility here, but I do lean towards a subclade of what Dante has, which is a subclade of EM34. So I think EL29 is a good, possibility for that. So that's why I say Dante has a better chance than most who are involved in these discussions. But by the same token, there would be a certain minority amongst Ashkenazim who would also have that chance.
All right. So Dante's DNA is a little different from other people that you've seen in West Africa.
What I would say is West Africa.
Is his DNA the same? Is his DNA the same as the majority of people that came over here, from what you understand?
It depends on our perspective. I would say if we're looking at his precise subclade, it's a minority subclade amongst the West African diaspora within the Americas.
Oh, a minority. Okay. Dante, what would you say to that? Then I want to see what Orthodox Moors have to say. Same thing, Ashkenazi, because if they're out here preaching, so are the Israelites right? Are they right that those people are not bloodline, are not the original people? That was not of Mount Sinai. They're converts at best. Are Israelites right for that? Damon Richardson brought up the 13th tribe.
Actually, can I touch on that real quick about the Khazar thing?
Yes.
Really quickly, what I wanted to say is I think there needed to be more discussion there because I think there's two different competing ideas that come into play. Like, there's one thing to say that, Ashkenazim are simply Khazars. I think Damon's right that can be waved off. This idea that, and Dante doesn't say that they're simply Khazars, but I'm saying if for those people who try to say that, just try to point to Ashkenaz and say, oh, they're just Khazars, that doesn't, Damon's right that doesn't fit with the genetic evidence. But to say that still doesn't really answer the questions or the concerns that people have about the overall spectrum. Like, what if you say, like what we just said in this discussion, that no, they're not simply Khazars, but still a majority of them don't descend patrilineally from Jacob? Like, does that make it more complex? So there's two sort of issues there. One, whether they're simply Khazars, and I'm fully in favor of saying that's nonsense in light of the genetic evidence, but that doesn't really answer the question of how many of them fit a given definition of Israelite, whatever that is. In this case, like I said, I assume we're working on a patrilineal definition. And in that case, I would assume most of them don't fit that definition.
All right, Dante, your DNA is a little different. It's not like everybody else from West Africa. So how do you deal with that in light of all these folk running around here talking about they took a DNA, they DNA? And then
I always say this, I'm not the DNA guy. And when I speak about DNA, I speak about my own DNA. I don't know enough to speak about everybody else's DNA. And as far as the Khazar thing, that's fine. I can accept that. Historically, if they were the Khazars, though, I actually have sources that prove that the Khazars lived with the tribe of Simeon for a long time and learned the ways that some of them did convert. But you know, historically, I could prove that some of the Khazars were indeed converts, but as many of the studies that I've started reading has pointed to, including the Wayne State University study that Damon Richardson brought up, I can accept that they are not bloodline descendants of the Khazars. I have no problem with that. That's not my argument or my fight to prove whether or not they are or aren't Khazars, because the DNA still points to only a minority of them are or could be bloodline Israelites, but the rest are converts.
Okay, Orthodox Moor, your thoughts on that?
I'm sorry, could I say one real quick thing about the Ashkenazim and the Khazar? And I apologize to Orthodox Moor for interrupting.
Go ahead.
What I was going to say was, I wouldn't, while I reject the idea of Ashkenazim in total being Khazars, I would carefully say that I don't reject the historical record that says that there was a mass conversion amongst the Khazars, that some of them, especially the elites, did convert to Judaism. And I would assume that some of their descendants, of those Khazar converts descendants, are still amongst the Ashkenazi spectrum to this day. What I would say is the Wayne State study doesn't really get into Khazar samples. That's one of its weaknesses. But there are subsequent studies that talk about the haplogroups found amongst the Khazar burials. And what they find is that, for example, R1A is common amongst them, Q and G. So I would say these haplogroups do exist amongst the minority of Ashkenazim. So while it doesn't prove that R1A or Q or G carrying Ashkenazim are descendants of Khazars, it is plausible that those particular Ashkenazim are the patrilineal descendants of Khazar converts. It's plausible.
Okay, y'all heard him say converts. Y'all been hearing that, right? Christianity, do y'all hear what's being said? I know y'all gonna say there's no experts here, but y'all hear what's being said, correct? All right, go ahead, Orthodox Moor.
Yeah, real quick on the cases, I would say my position is that they will make up a negligible amount of Ashkenazi DNA. Like, you're definitely going to find some remnant there, but it's going to be a negligible amount.
Do me a favor. Read the screen. I want to boot it. I'm gonna leave that one up there too. From in your oppression.
Read it, Abu.
Yeah. You go ahead. Then Abu can speak on it too.
So, Abu, are you saying that Damon Remedial Richardson was off to some extent? Yeah, I'm gonna say that in his assessment that Damon was off on quite a bit.
On the two things now on the floor.
No.
Go ahead.
Not on part one. I don't get into the Khazarian theory. I don't support the Khazarian theory. But on part two, he was wrong as two left feet. And
okay,
so
we need to get you. All right, so you agree with him on one?
In the sense to where the Khazarian theory is not viable, yes. In the sense like they are the origin of Ashkenazi. 100% I agree with them on that.
Okay, all right, Abu.
I'm sorry, the question went off the screen, but what I would say is that was a 5-hour discussion, so there may have been stuff that I missed in that discussion. What I would say is I certainly agree with Damon Richardson that the DNA evidence does not support the idea of just waving off the Khazar spectrum, the Ashkenazi spectrum in its entirety as Khazars. I think that's wrong. But I don't know if he took a position on whether a minority of them could descend from Khazar converts. I certainly take the view that the historical evidence and the genetic evidence makes it quite plausible, and I would even say probable and likely.
No. A good bit of Israelites are saying that they're Khazars. It was mass conversion. They're not original. They're not bloodline to the Middle East.
I think these are diverse populations. The Ashkenazi spectrum is a diverse population that's gained, converts consistently across its history. So it's a complex spectrum. It can't be just simply waved off as just Israelites or just Khazars or just anything else. It's a diverse spectrum, is what I would say.
All right, Dante, what's your main problem with what Richardson say and why you call it remedial?
Everything he had to say about West Africa, I'm pretty sure Moor and Abu can explain the DNA part of it way better than I could. But as far as historically, he's wrong. I have so many sources that show historically that Israel came out of Jerusalem in 70 AD into what they call Northern Africa. And then from there, they moved into Central Africa, or where you start getting to the term Sub-Saharan Africa, which is more of a political term than an actual separation of Africa. And you will see that people from the North and what they call Sub-Saharan Africa mixed. So they moved down into Central Africa, West Africa, and South Africa. But they also moved up into Spain and Portugal. And when the Inquisition started, a lot of them were forced into Portugal and then back down into Morocco. And we also have historical evidence that according to some of the Igbo, that their ancestors came from Morocco. And then we have evidences of Black Portuguese Jews all in that area of Africa, from Lamlim, Timbuktu in Mali, Angola, Cameroon, Nigeria, Ghana, Benin, Togo, all up and down the west coast through central part of Africa up into North Africa. We can prove that there were Israelite towns and settlements all in that area because they got chased down there during the Inquisition. And then Portugal also started deporting them to Sao Tome and Principe, which are two islands right off of West Africa. So that whole area is an Israelite hotbed, according to multiple sources. The 1868 source that I read that went up to 1865, the one I just read, the Africanist source, says that they came down through Central Africa and migrated there. And then the other source says Portugal put a bunch of them in West Africa. And then another source says that some of them came down from Morocco into that area. So we have historical sources that talk about at least 3 separate migrations of Israel into West Africa, all along where they were taking, all along the coast where they were taking slaves. Now, I can't answer the DNA, but historically we can prove that Israel was in that area. And then the Cambridge source says that they were targeting Israelites and that they were more likely to be taken into slavery than other people.
I want to ask Abu and Orthodox Moor that also. One of Damon demands was to prove that Ashkenazi are not Jews. Orthodox Moor, Dante, Abu are Orthodox, are Ashkenazis not Jews?
Again, it depends on the definition. And I would say, if I watched only some of that 5-hour discussion, and I don't recall Damon Richardson settling on a specific definition. But if, for the sake of argument, if, as I said earlier, we're holding to a patrilineal definition of Israelite, I'm not saying you have to, but if that's our definition that we're working with, which most Israelites work with, I would say that most Ashkenazim do not fit that definition in light of the available genetic evidence. And that's not attempting to disrespect them. It's just a fact.
Okay, all right. Orthodox Moor, same question. Are Ashkenazi Jews?
Yeah, just to touch on that. I'm not going to touch on the national level because that involves religious stuff, and that can get influenced. But just in terms of like lineage and paternal lineage, I agree with Abu in the sense of the vast majority in the YAP game model. We have Shem being happens with Eden and whatnot, so the vast majority of Ashkenazis would not fall underneath that, but there'd be like a good 20-30% that would.
Okay, Dante, do me a favor, read the screen. I'm gonna play some of this video. See what y'all thoughts are. The super chat, I mean.
All right, so if your fellow Israelites do not have the same DNA you have and find out they are not blood aligned, does that eliminate them from this movement? I think it's interesting that you use the word movement, because we don't use that word when we talk about the Ashkenazi Jews. We don't call their ethnicity claim a movement. Also, I'm not the DNA guy. I'm not the person to ask about DNA. Again, Abu and Moor know vastly more about it than me, so they'd be the person or the people to defer to about the DNA question. I just deal with my own DNA.
A lot of people saying this is dumb. What Israelites are saying are dumb. The few people that are speaking on it. So I want y'all to listen to some of this. I'm gonna mute everybody. I want y'all to listen to some of this right here. Somebody give me some fair.
Wonder if I could bring it up because I closed it out and I didn't mean to. Let's see if I can. Actually, I'm gonna stop my screen sharing here. And I want y'all to hear this. I'm going to see if I can get that. I'm going to see if I can get it up. Y'all on YouTube, be patient with me. Go ahead, Sister Valanda. Oh, she just left out. But let me see if I can find it real quick. Let's see. Because I recorded it. And Pastor Damon came up here day before yesterday. He talked about it, and everything that he said was 100% dead on. He was right. And I took the time because I don't trust the host of that channel. Let's see. Oh yes, here we go. I want y'all to hear some of this. All right, YouTube. All right, Clubhouse, take a listen. Let me go right here where Pastor.
No, I want y'all to hear. Y'all don't get this.
Let me pause this. Let me go over here. I want to get to the part where Pastor Damon is speaking when he comes on his garbage platform. But he kicked the front door in. Oh, he kicked the front door in. Everything he said was 100% truth. So I'm going.
Now, she said everything he said was 100% truth. I told y'all Damon Richardson, Vince Bantu and them, heavy in the urban apologetic community. So all the people are hearing, they're listening, they'll go repeat it. They'll go repeat it. This is garbage because the floor is open for discussion. Oh, the floor open for discussion. They'll just grab something and get to running the whole muck and all of this other stuff. But let's just see if everything he said in the presence of everybody, because he's been quiet. In the presence of everybody, is that Wayne State? Is it? Let's just see what's going on, and let's see how they're parading on the truth that came out. How he shut y'all down. Now, remember when he was here, I said y'all ain't naming no scholars. So to them, it's locked down. The leader said that that's enough. There's no further looking. He said it. This is what it is.
I want y'all to hear some of this. All right. Let's see. I'm just trying to get it to the right spot. All right. Were y'all able to hear that, Brother Yeshua or Sean, Yolanda? Okay, good, because that's all I played. Okay. All right, praise God. All right, so let me see if I can get this at a comfortable volume, because I don't want to blow your ears away. And I know the people on YouTube, they're okay, so they can hear through my computer. You're hearing through my speakers. So I just want to make sure that you guys can hear comfortably. Okay, bring it up that way. All right. Listen to this.
You're asking me what in the video is anti-Semitic.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, number one, as I said, you said you watched the video a number of times. So if you agree with the video, then that's why you don't see anything anti-Semitic. So let's start with what's the most obvious, right? Because you agree with it, its premise, so you don't think it's anti-Semitic. So let me explain to you why it's anti-Semitic. Well, number one, the video denies that 6 million or more Jews were even killed in the Holocaust. Another
I'm not sure Ron Dalton denies the Holocaust or it happened the way. I'm not even sure about that. But he'll make a statement. Did Ron Dalton deny the Holocaust? Yes or no? Tell the truth.
If I recall correctly, he has doubts about the precise figure.
Okay, the numbering. Okay, he's not a Holocaust denier. Okay, correct. Thank you.
propaganda of white supremacists.
So clearly, and I brought this up for a reason, because now that you got proper teaching, right, and we dealt with some history, I wanted you to hear what they're doing. So in the book of Hebrews to Negroes, it denies that the Holocaust actually happened. How they come to that conclusion?
Does Hebrew to Negroes deny the Holocaust happened? Does Hebrew to Negroes, I'm asking anybody in here, does the book Hebrew, because other people are saying the number, if you're denying that the whole Holocaust didn't exist at all, is that the same as questioning the numbers? We got people that question the numbers on slavery. Is it the same? I'm asking y'all a question because the Christians are truthful, you black lying Israelites. That's who y'all are. That's my new name for y'all. That's what they calling y'all. I gotta ride with them. Y'all are black lying Israelites, fake black Israelites. Now, the truthful Christians, I want to hear this from y'all because I don't have Ron Dalton. I ain't looking at an awakening. Is Ron Dalton denying the Holocaust or denying numbers? There's a big difference. It ain't like if you were a virgin or not. Go ahead, the floor's open. I need some answers on that. We know Sister Cherry ain't a liar, and we know them Christians ain't spreading no false information. Who can prove Ron Dalton? I'm just asking y'all a question. I don't care about these folk. I care about the truth, though. And if he got numbers on the question, he got denying there's problems with that or denying that those are two different things. Dunamis, you want to say something? I see you jump back on.
No, it's just a question. Abu answered in the chat, but like dealing with the lemba in terms of E, how many of them would paternally fit that model?
But
you just came on here and changed the whole subject?
No, it's related.
All right, I'm gonna give that some time.
Yeah,
I want to know if Ron Dalton denies the Holocaust. That's what y'all gotta answer. That's what's on the floor right now.
I haven't seen any evidence of him denying it in toto. If I've come across things where it seems in the film, I haven't looked at what he says in his books, but in the film, he seems to be disputing the precise number, or at least echoing someone else who's doing. He's quoting someone else that seems to have doubts about the precise number.
And that's what I've seen too. And then sometimes some folks will say if you're a Holocaust, if you question the Holocaust, you're automatically a Holocaust denier. So there's that slippery slope sometimes with that.
Can I say one other thing? I noticed
Dunamis, do you agree it's a problem if you're saying that he's a Holocaust denier and he's questioning the numbers? Is that pure truth? Are you speaking truth? Are you speaking factually? I'm asking you a question. Don't try to say because they Christians over there, you riding with them. I'm asking you a question, Dunamis. Is it right and exact for a holy apologist to spread that falsehood if it's false? Now, if it's right, I don't care. Like I said, I don't care about Ron Dalton. I ain't even looking at the book. But is it right, Dunamis? That's what I want to see. If you're going to ride with somebody just because they claiming to be a Christian, or you're going to tell the truth. That's what I want to know from you.
Nah, to me, if they wanted to say that claim, they should have said from what he said, this is what we're seeing, or things that matter. But for them to speak matter of fact, I wouldn't have done that because there are those on other groups who will say it's automatically denial, but from it just asking questions, same thing Noam Chomsky does. So to me, they took it a little step further than what it needs to be.
All right, go ahead. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
That wasn't. It didn't seem like to me. But I'm not gonna say because I haven't watched the whole documentary and that kind of stuff, so I gotta go back to it. But I wouldn't necessarily put this broad statement on him or say that this is his claim. This is what I saw.
Go ahead, brother. All right, go ahead.
Yeah. So with the lemba.
Yeah. So what you were asking about the lemba, they are similarly patrilineally diverse. I think it's there's a study, a Himla Sudyal study, Lemba Origins Revisited, which is in the South African Medical Journal from 2013. She covers their haplogroups, and if we're talking about specifically E1B1B, it's a minority haplogroup amongst the Lemba. The Lemba are similar to the Ashkenazim insofar that they range across a diverse spectrum of haplogroups and therefore of paternal lines.
Yeah, they have about like 12, 13 different haplogroups. They have 3 different E haplogroups. They have E1B and B, E1B1A, and E and 40. The majority of the haplogroups end up being under E and J, which is actually.
Question is, are the Israelites right when they say them people are fake? I don't know if they don't really use. They say some say converts at best.
It depends on how it's worded. Obviously, the Israelite spectrum is very diverse and says different things. But if someone just waves all of the Ashkenazim off or thinks they can determine someone's paternal lineage based on how they look, like you see a guy with light skin and wearing, Hasidic Jewish clothing, a black hat, and some side locks, they're wrong if they think they can guess that guy's lineage. If they say that the majority of them don't descend patrilineally from Jacob, I would say they're right about that. But we have to nuance it, obviously. Some are a bit more crude than that and not that nuanced, but others are.
Let's get into it.
All right, no, hold on real quick. No, the reason I ask that is just to be fair and balanced because there are those, not everyone, but there are those who take with the Ashkenaz to say that minority of them or things of that nature could be bloodline. But if we go with that narrative, then how do we view the Lemba then? You know what I'm saying? In terms of that same kind of standard.
It would have to be a mixed bag. Like it all.
Yeah, it'd be a very similar situation.
Exactly. I think that's where there's some folks who are not seeing.
But it's gonna be. It's actually gonna be like that in every Jewish population, like any population that you find. This is what I was going to touch on concerning Dante's DNA, because a lot of people say Dante's DNA is like uncommon for West Africans. in terms of.
But it is. I thought you just agreed that it was.
So is mine. However, it's certain sections of West Africa. It's not uncommon. So he has DNA that's not uncommon for the Sahel, which is like in between North Africa and West Africa. My DNA.
You said not uncommon.
Yeah, not uncommon. Yeah, you can find it there.
In Morocco, it gets a lot more common.
Right, but you can also find. So again, you can find it amongst Moroccan Jews, Libyan Jews, Ethiopian Jews. Right. So what's interesting about it being on the Sahel, right, is like so the Sahel is right there on a trade route from Ethiopia, Eritrea, etc. And we find historical migrations coming from this part of the world going to West Africa, going to Mali, etc. Whatnot. Which is in the Sahel, where you find this DNA pattern, right? Where you find his DNA, where you find my DNA, right? You're not going to find Dante's DNA in Angola too much or something like that, right? Or like the Congo too much. However, you're going to find his DNA in all four corners of the world where people are claiming to be Jews, though, and also where you find them that DNA and people claim to be Jews. You're going to find this diversity of DNA amongst those same people because again, it's just like the Limba story. Limba talked about they had a handful of men that went from Yemen to Southeast Africa, whatnot, and then intermarried with the women there, etc., whatnot. And then there's conversions and all that type of stuff that happened with it. It's a mixed bag no matter where you go. It's just like the mixed multitude coming out of Egypt. It's the same story no matter where Israel is. It's always going to be a mixed multitude. Some people agree, some people disagree, but the genetics don't lie on that. And I wanted to quickly ask Dante a question about the 400-year prophecy that goes along with that, because I hear what you were saying real quick. I want people to if you want to critique Dante on what he's saying on the 400 years or try to talk to him about it or whatever, you should definitely buy his book and understand what he's saying about it, because a lot of people have a lot to say about the 400-year prophecy, and not everyone's saying the same thing. He definitely lays out what he's talking about in his book. So if you want to know what he's saying, you should definitely get his book and understand what he's saying about it, right?
You don't hold you personally don't hold to the 400 years?
No, I don't. But I have people that I love and respect that do hold to versions of the 400 years, like a rolling 400-year prophecy for like multiple people around the world or whatnot. I don't espouse the concept, but I think that every form should be taken on a case-by-case basis. Just like if you're trying to find out who's a patrilineal version of a patrilineal Israelite, like it should be taken on a case-by-case basis. Like, so there's some people that say like after 400 years, boom, we're going to leave. That's already been proven wrong. That's on a case-by-case basis. That won't fall in his face, right? There's other people that say other things, right? But to that end, real quick, like, so Dante, I was reading your book and I was trying to find out something. Like, I didn't see much about DNA in the book, like you were talking about. So to this end, about like the Israelites being scattered to the four corners of the world or whatnot, right? It seems like in your book and in your perspective, is like the four corners is meant to be understood as the United States by itself, from the 1619 to the 2019 applies to the United States by itself. Should I understand? Is that how you understand it, or I also hear you talking about like Sephardic Jews, Ashkenazi Jews, Ethiopian Jews can have your DNA. We find people in India that have E1B1B, right? We find people like the Limba Jews have E1B1B. That seems to be like the four corners of the world right there, as far as I'm concerned, right? So is the slave trade you're talking about in the captivity just in the U.S. or can it expand to the four corners of the globe, India, Europe, South Africa, etc.?
Which book specifically are you talking about? Because date would matter when it was.
Your book about the last
the Black Hebrew Awakening.
Yeah.
All right, so I published Black Hebrew Awakening almost 5 years ago. Four corners. I've always believed four corners to be the whole world. Black Hebrew Awakening specifically the majority of it deals with the American history of slavery. Because at that time, that's mostly what I was dealing with. And there's a little bit about other stuff around the world. But of course, in the last 5 years, I've learned a lot more about history. But I've always believed the four corners is a reference to north, east, south, and west, not specific geographical location, but just more of an idiom to refer to all directions on the globe, or flat plane, whatever you guys want to believe.
So quick follow-up to that end, like, so is the 400-year captivity as you see it around the globe or just in the Americas?
I believe the 400 years is a marker that God pointed to, just to kind of have something to say, all right, look, this thing right here is what I'm talking about. I believe the curses hit Israel as a nation, so I don't believe that every single curse applied to every single Israelite. Some Israelites were going to go into slavery, some were not. We know there's prophecies about things that would happen to women and children that don't apply to the men. Some stuff that applies to the men that don't apply to the women. So we know that every curse doesn't happen to every single person. So that book, again, the majority of the history is going to cover the United States, but have stuff after that that covers other parts of the world. So no, it doesn't just, I don't just believe it referred to the United States.
All right.
So,
You want to, Elder Green, you want to say something before I play the rest of the video?
Yeah, I want to share something. I know everybody done read this book and have this book, but like I said, I don't hold to
just along the lines of the DNA, or you getting ready to change the subject because y'all trying to run interference.
No, this ain't this online the DNA. This online the DNA.
Go ahead. I can't read that. We're Hebrews in West Africa. That's so you got old books.
Now two, I think it was Elder Dante and I think who was the brother who spoke before him? Orthodox.
Moor, yes, correct.
Yeah, and I don't get into DNA thing. Lord knows I don't, because in my personal view, I don't know how they can concretely prove that without going and putting up Abraham's tomb bones and all that kind of stuff. I'm gonna read some out of chapter 5 here of this book. That's a small paragraph of it.
What did Richardson say? I'm sorry. What did Richardson say specifically that nobody in West Africa, there's no connection? What's the words he used exactly? Cue that up for me, Dunamis. I want to make sure everybody, because I want to make sure we all just quoting each other and quoting the works properly. Richardson said,
correctly, it did sound like Damon Richardson had said that he doesn't deny that there are Jewish and Semitic populations spread across Africa. I could have sworn he said that.
All right, go ahead. I heard that.
Okay, well, I think I heard you sharing that gentleman on your show. I think I remember hearing that scene. I probably jumped to that day. I'm not sure. But like I said, I don't, whatever he shared, the Damon guy, whatever he shared, I just want to, my whole point is this. I'm going to tell you why I'm reading this little point here. Because when Israel, now I hold to very strongly, my conviction very strongly is that those, Shalom, good to see you, Dave, good to see you, appreciate you. My whole conviction is, strong conviction is that those original Jews, Israelites, they won't call Jews back then, Israelites, and Berean, I do want to share too one day that this whole thing about the Jew thing and I'm a Jew, and I had no problem with calling myself Jew, and I can teach and show why I had no problem with doing that. It ain't got nothing to do with some of the stuff that people are saying later on. That's some late stuff that came along. But here, I believe that the original Israelites were people of color people, not like even myself, more so of a darker complected, blood Israel. Now, once they begin to diaspora or disperse and intermingle, I don't know how the blood worked from that point on. That's why I'm not going to be one to quick to say who is and who is not. And I don't know how they would do a thorough test on this subject matter without having some bones. I mean, I don't know how that works, but now
hold on a minute. I'm sorry. Hold on a minute. Abu, is it silly? Because we arguing. I think my sister just said, she said if somebody's converts, where's the bloodline? Is it silly, Abu? Is it silly? Is it silly, y'all? Is it silly to argue for a pure Israelite DNA anywhere?
Well, I don't know what if we mean autosomal, I don't know what that means, but it's not silly to say that there are patrilineal descendants of Jacob walking the earth today, and that they're all over the place and they run across spectrum. Dante could be one of them, a minority of Ashkenazi could be them, and so forth. And some of the Lemba could be them, some of the Ethiopian Jews and so on. So that's not absurd and that's not silly. By the way, I just looked it up, and when you had Damon on in your show, it was at the 4-hour, 55-minute mark. He made clear that he doesn't rule out there being, different a spectrum of peoples, including Semitic peoples in across Africa. However, listening to it now, it seems like he was working on a autosomal definition, which I must confess would be incredibly difficult to work with and honestly vague. But go ahead, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and well, I mean, here we go. Yeah.
Hold on, I'm sorry. I want to know what he mean by that, because he said that Walmart. A lot of y'all aren't expert. He's not. That's not his field, DNA. But he spoke like a lot of y'all get on here and don't know what the hell y'all talking about. Just Berean talking. Is he doing the same thing, Abu? Do we sound like he might be a little confused on how it's done?
You talking about Damon Richardson?
I think that's a fair question, because he said a lot of y'all get on here like y'all experts and y'all not experts in the field. Though at least he got a degree in some field, but it's not that. But what is your opinion?
None of us are experts here, but what I would say is that it didn't seem I don't recall. Now I didn't listen to the whole show, so maybe there's something I missed. But as far as what I saw, he never settled on a precise definition of Israelite. So there is an issue of like how exactly do you hit the target if we don't even know where the target is? What he was saying at times did seem to be working, perhaps unwittingly, but working on an autosomal concept of DNA, which would be incredibly vague, and also perhaps it'd be very different autosomally from Jacob, yet still be a patrilineal descendant of Jacob. You know what I mean?
And that's also why he fell flat on his face.
Always part of mine is the definition of starting.
Can I ask this question? Let him answer. I ain't even gonna read out this.
I don't know why I feel in my spirit. I'm telling you right now. I hope you're not running interference, Elder Green.
No, I'm not.
I'm not running interference. We're trying to get that. I want to make sure Damon Richardson ain't came on here talking like he know what he's talking about, and now other people that may not work in Wendy's but have a grasp on DNA is saying that he's off. That's all we trying to. Can we get out of?
Go ahead, play the video. Go ahead, play.
No, go ahead, Elder. I want you to go, but I want to make sure we get down, because he can't say something and fly by. Then Dante drop a video and fly by, and everybody flying by the way. We just got to get down to the facts.
Okay,
we got to get down to the facts. Okay. I'm asking straight up. I'm asking Orthodox Moor, in your little opinion. Abu, in your little opinion, Dante and their little opinion, does Damon Richardson have a grasp on what he's saying when he spoke on the DNA? That's all. I don't know what the problem is.
No, not at all. And what Abu just said about the autosomal is exactly why he fell flat on his face. Like, so if you go check out the YAP Gang video on the whole thing on the YAP Gang Scholarship channel, where we address what he had to say about it in detail on the DNA, we break down the fact that on an autosomal level, there's studies that came out that showed that 8 diverse Jewish populations, right? 8 diverse Jewish populations show that they all have an ancient connection to sub-Saharan African DNA that goes back to the founding time period of the Israelite nation. Right? So that at a connection of 3 to 5%, that's not small, right? That's very, very important, right? So what Abu was talking about, that he was talking about an autosomal connection. When okay, if we're talking about autosomal DNA at that juncture, then he definitely fell flat on his face when it came to the information, because again, YAP Gang tried to bring this information to me. He denied it out of hand and whatnot, and it showed a high amount of ignorance on the topic. It was a very
so some Christians are saying he came and shut it down and all of this stuff. So I could talk like I'm a professional till a professional come on here. I could talk like I'm a scholar until a scholar come on here. So the thing is, because if he came and other Christians are saying that they got a great victory, because Cherry and them gonna parade it, and it's not really a victory. We have to do, like you said, Orthodox, more slow it down and back it a little bit. That's all we got to do. If it's a great victory, shots fired. But if it's not a great victory, you're like, oh man, it's crazy, and they running like they done. I don't know. Keep go ahead, Elder Green.
Elder Berean, that young man, what's his name? Orthodox Moor. I mean, I mess names up. That's your name, brother?
Yes.
You can call me whatever you want to, but More works. Call me whatever you want to.
Okay. All right. That young man answered you directly with saying that the gentleman on the screen, I don't like saying names. That young man gave you a direct answer saying that from his research, from his understanding of the DNA, he fell on his face with his research. I don't know if the brother Abu responded yet. Did he respond directly to your question?
No, I'm waiting for Abu. I'm waiting. Let me get Garfield on this jack. That's Richardson Mans and them too. Let me get Garfield on this jack, because Garfield came and he touched DNA. Let me see what Garfield position is on that too. Dante. I want to hear Abu's position, because y'all know Abu been blowing it in, so he's not gonna just ride just to ride it. Abu say that I don't think he have a really deep grasp like them Genesis 4, like Sherry, like Orthodox, more like some other people may have. Nobody's an expert in the field, like this is science and they're what they do. But more Abu been around long enough and had these conversations long enough to kind of know who got a grasp on it. And from my understanding, 2-3 days later, people that have a grasp on it that represent and spoke and speak in Israel try to reach out to him. I just want to make sure that all of this is on the table. All of this is on the floor before we get to running a whole muck with victories and shut it down, and all this time to reading them and talking, and the whole thing is garbage and nobody don't know, and it's wrong. That's all I'm saying. Go ahead, Abu.
So what I was going to say was, I think the conversation that when Damon was on, the conversation about DNA started out vague and remained vague consistently throughout. And what hold on a second, I'm getting an echo here. But anyway, what I would say is, so for example, there were certain points when he would say, like, if you work for Wendy's or you work for Amazon, don't tell me about haplogroups. But then at another point, you know, he would talk about, you know, the percentages of DNA that are found amongst West African populations or the West African diaspora, at which point you're no longer discussing haplogroups, you're discussing autosomal DNA. And so I think it's not to say, I'm not going to say Damon fell on his face or anything like that, but what I would say is the conversation was vague and therefore it did not settle matters. The conversation has to be, as Moore always says, the conversation has to be slowed down and more nuance needs to be brought in. It certainly wasn't definitive, is what I was saying.
Abu, let me ask you a quick question, like, because you're way more black.
Yo, Abu ain't coming on here no more. Abu ain't coming on here no more. If Damon Richardson, in your personal opinion, he didn't know what he was talking about saying. That's all I'm saying. It sounds like I'm asking you a question, Abu, and you're trying to be, and I know you're the gentleman of the community. I know you're not ignorant like me and a bunch of these other folk running around here, but we're trying to go somewhere, Abu. In your personal opinion, if you didn't know anything just coming into the conversation, would you think he had a grasp of what he's talking about?
I don't know.
I'm going to church.
Let him talk, Berean. Let him talk. Oh, let him talk. Go ahead.
All I would say is that because the conversation was so vague, his approach was vague as well. I want to see what would happen if he was narrowed down to a specific definition. Like if we're just looking for patrilineal or likely patrilineal descendants of Jacob, what would that look like? You know, I think he would.
Here's where I gotta ask you, Boo, like, because you saw our interaction, you saw our video and that, right? Like, so he talked about how he kind of dropped the ball in the autosomal concept, right? Even when you get into the patrilineal and the widening, he was still making like the whole isolation myth concept mistake, like assuming that everybody in West Africa has the same haplogroup, right? Like, so that again, that's showing ignorance of the concept. There's A, there's B, there's E1B1A, there's E1B1B, there's EM33. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of different haplogroups in West Africa. It's not just one. So, like, again, so he's not showing proficiency on either side of the ball. Would you agree or disagree?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And so, with that in mind, because people are going to wonder what presentation you're talking about, on the response on the YAP Gang Scholarship channel is quite good. So I guess I would recommend that. Yeah, and I think the vagaries were there were quite a few.
I don't know why it seemed like, all right, everybody, fair use. I don't know why it seemed like it's pulling two for the Boo. Boo and Ella Green scared me today. I'm always scared on the panel with a few people, so don't let that bother you. Let me play some more and let's see where they're at, and let's just see if there's things that need to be challenged that didn't go challenged, or some things that's flat out wrong. Y'all, a few of y'all, it's like a lot of y'all not into Ron Dalton, but 2 or 3 people said Ron Dalton is not a straight Holocaust denier. Let me know if anything I'm missing on Dunamis for you.
Just pure stupidity. Pure stupidity. Okay? There's so much evidence to prove that the Holocaust actually happened. I don't know where these people get off saying that, but they're in that book. He says it, but I digress. I want you to hear this for yourself. Folk on YouTube, I hope y'all okay. Y'all let me know. Can y'all hear perfectly fine? I know Clubhouse told me that they could too, because they're hearing through my speakers. But I want y'all to hear this argument. Now listen to this.
Video makes denial of that. It also makes the claim
that West African blacks are the true Israelites, and that the Ashkenazis and even some of the other groups like the Mizrahi Jews or the Sephardic Jews are not, that they are fake. That's anti-Semitism.
Okay.
Did not make any of those claims?
Are you speaking of the first part?
No. I want you to ask me, did it not make any of those claims?
No, it did not. He did not. He posted the writings of a Jewish scholar who mentioned that in the writing, because it scrolled down in the beginning of the video. Ron Dalton had several Jewish people and their quotes about what they believe in and what they were doing. So he quoted some Jewish. Wait a minute, hold on. Let me finish because hold on. I gotta finish. I have to finish.
Hold on a second. What you're doing is denying the claims that the video were making. The fact
No. He brought evidence in writing and he quoted the source of Jewish scholars. No. That doesn't mean that he brought. No, that's not your point. The point is this: he didn't actually say it verbally because he narrated his video. In the beginning of the video, hold on, Damon. Hold on, Mr. Richardson.
Well, hold on. No.
Wait a minute. But no, because you're trying. No. I don't disrespect you.
Okay, no. But you're already disrespecting me. Because
no, I'm not disrespecting you.
Hold on. What you are doing is completely disingenuous. The fact of the matter is, listen, sir.
You said, I asked you a question in the beginning. Did Ron Dalton's video where?
And the answer is not true. The video, listen, sir.
The video quoted a Jewish scholar about what he believes. So it does matter because it's not Ron Dalton's. It's not his words. He quoted. No, because if you quote a source, Brother Richardson, if you quote a source, wait a minute, we both can't talk at the same time. We both can't talk at the same time. Wait, listen, Brother Richardson. No.
That the video makes the claim. I didn't say.
I'm telling you. Wait a minute. We both can't talk at the same time. And what I'm trying to get you to understand is
somebody else. I can't talk to somebody.
No. Because you won't admit it. He did not verbally said it. He narrated his video. In the beginning, he scrolled several sources that shows the anti-Semitism and what it was believed.
Orthodox Moor is Ron Dalton material anti-Semitic. Orthodox Moor is Ron Dalton material anti-Semitic.
In my opinion, yeah. In the sense to where like he's all about telling people who they can't be and whatnot, right? So I would agree that's an anti-Semitic concept.
Abu, is Ron Dalton's information anti-Semitic?
As I've said before, I really don't like these sort of labels, name calling, because all it does is shut down arguments. Even if we say he's an anti-Semite, that doesn't tell us about the accuracy of any particular claim he makes. So what I would ask, not just with Dalton, with everybody, with you, with me, with everybody, that we get past the name calling and the label, saying this person's an anti-Semite, this person's a homophobe, this person's a racist. It doesn't tell us anything about the accuracy of a particular claim.
I agree with that 100%.
Anybody else want to speak on that right there? In light of the evidence and stuff that's coming out, is Ron Dalton's material good to use or not to use? Is this what the guy said? This is a red herring or something to get away from the main argument when we start dealing with this basketball player and other people is using Ron Dalton information to come into this awakening. Anybody want to say anything on that before we go on with this video?
No, I would just say, well, I agree with Abu to an extent. I think intentions can play to a factor in terms of interpreting people's work and what they put out. You know what I'm saying? So, like, for instance, when you have certain works from a certain time period, you know that there tends to be a view during that time period, whatever the case may be. So that has to take into account to what the information being presented. So while we don't want to label people to stop conversations, I don't think we can just ultimately take everything out per se in terms of someone's intentions or what it produced. If that makes sense.
Okay, no. I'm glad you put that out there. Or anybody else?
Elder Berean, I want to ask this question, and then,
Yes,
and then I'm going. Then I'm going. Okay.
Yes,
And this ain't changing the topic. This ain't
no.
changing the
Go ahead, Elder.
You said I already scared you, so you got to tell me later on. Tell me how I scared you.
Oh no. You know you had me scared not last time. A few. When was that? I can't remember what it was.
I'm always scared, but I know we good. But this is the question I want to ask. Now, sound like both of these brothers, Abu and brother Orthodox Moor, they gave their answer best they could to your question, and sound like their answers, sound like the brother that presented that information about West Africa, sound like these two brothers, and they're not saying they're no scholars. I'm no scholar. Sound like they say, okay, maybe he needs to relook at his work and be more. I'm putting my own words. Maybe he needs to relook at his work, put it like that, because his work is not too concrete. That's why I take away from both of these brothers' answers. So with that being said, with me saying what I said right there is this. Like I said earlier, what those blood Israelites did in diaspora, going all over the world, intermingling with all complexion, all races, at the end of the day, I believe it's safe to say it's going to take a step of faith for all of us that's claiming Israel, because how can you, in my mind, how can you prove it without going back and digging up some ancient bones? Now, with that being said, where is the problem coming in then? What's the problem, or what's the big argument if you have the light complected saying that they're Israel and you have the dark complected saying, where is the problem? I don't get the beef. I don't get the beef. I don't know
the
if that
beef is
changes.
a bunch of dark-skinned folk running around saying the light-skinned ones are fake, and some of them, if you press them, they'll have to admit that they believe that they are by faith. Then they come in here preaching and telling us that we are. Definitely. So it's a big problem.
Well, can at least we on this panel, because we in this community, can we at least say we don't think that they fake?
Most of these folk running around here think that more people fake.
No, well.
So you can't even preach the awakening without tearing down other folk.
Well, I think you can. If they want to, I don't preach no awakening and stuff like that. But because when the dry bones come alive, I go Ezekiel. Y'all know that. That's why I'm on the live subject.
Oh boy, him and serving charity, get him Ezekiel to me out. I'm not reading Ezekiel for the rest of my life. I'm telling y'all right now.
But I'm just telling you, the dry bones got to. Well, now I will say this. This ain't changing the subject. Those dry bones coming alive.
We've been preaching that though. What do it mean? We've been preaching that. We've been preaching that, but what it used to mean when we preached it back to 20 years ago is different from what it means right now. They talking about a physical thing. When did this thing shift from a spiritual thing to?
Well, if somebody took it to spiritual, that ain't what we.
It started off spiritual. The slaves looked at certain things, and we say that a shift took place. They're saying that they been knew who they were. Let me get to the Benaiah issue, because this one running interference. They don't want me to get there. They don't want this. I know what's going on with this Christian. Not every Christian in here. I know what's going on.
But Ezekiel, now somebody may take it and jump into the spiritual realm with it, but you can't remove it was given in the natural. You got to start in the natural before you jump in the spiritual. That verse right there is dealing with a natural Israel in that verse. Now you can go take it and spiritualize everything you want to spiritualize, but you can't remove that's talking about natural. Period. You can't get around that. Now, with that being said, I don't get the, but I think you did. You gave the answer. You gave the answer when you said,
Elder Green. Let me ask you this question. Right, it's going to answer your question. Do you believe I'll bless those that bless you, curse those that curse you? How do you interpret that?
I will bless those that bless thee, and I will
curse those that curse.
I believe the way that the Most High gave it.
Okay. Now that passage has been used in the church to send aid over to Israel. Do you think now that there are Israelites over here in America that we should cut or slow down money being sent to the nation Israel to support Israelites here in the Americas?
Good question.
Listen, Dunamis, you asked that a good way, brother. You asked that a good way, but
you answered a good way. You make sure you answer the good way. He talking about you ass. I'm telling you these.
Look. But no,
I know what's going on.
But Dunamis asked the question. Dunamis asked the question. Dunamis asked the question. Now watch this. Based on what Dunamis asked, ask him one more again. Ask him one more again, Dunamis.
So
one more again.
If I bless those and bless these, curse those and curse these, they're taking literal, like being in church does.
Right.
Should we cut or slow down aid to the nation of Israel to support Israelites that are here in the Americas?
Dunamis, my answer to that would be this. If somebody wants to bless Israel, then they need to bless who is being called Israel. So if it's crossed the water, if it's over here. So now you're gonna pick and choose.
No. In that case, if it's money given out, if it's packages given out, if it's stimulus given out, if reparations given out, everybody gonna claim Israel. You can't just do it that way.
Well.
I'm sorry. I'm too ignorant for this.
No, but that's good, Berean. But that's a good point. Because then you got everybody and their mama claiming Israel. Then you got everybody and their mama claiming Israel to try to get some kind of.
We just supposed to accept it. You folks saying y'all Israel church supposed to just accept that? And Fervent Charity better not bring up them light skin folk because he just as yellow as them. Let me ask. So people just about you tell us what to do.
No, I
don't
can't
lose the respect they got for you, Elder. Don't do that.
I can't. I'm trying to answer Elder Dunamis' question, which is a good, legit question, because if someone is claiming Israel and they believe and persuaded they're Israel, whether it be over here or over there, then you got to spread it. According to his question, you got to spread it love. Bless those. You can't. That verse is talking about Israel. So wherever Israel, who call it themselves Israel, you got to respect that. So that'd be my answer. I know.
This is a politician. I'm convinced. That's a politician right there. That's a politician right there.
How can you get around it? Okay, I'll tell you what.
So wait a minute. So we in Christianity are supposed to look at the black folk in here the same way we look at the pure Jew in Israel?
No, I'm gonna tell you what
John Hagee done told us about. The 700. Wait a minute.
Let me take my face off.
Wait a minute. Somebody get Mr. Terry right now. So these black folk on the same level as them good God folk over there?
Look,
Y'all gonna make me talk. Y'all gonna make me talk Greek right now.
Here we go.
That's what y'all want?
Here we go. Now, watch this. Watch this now. Get this.
So what is that fulfilled prophecy that God put in the land in 1948? We're supposed to just put these fools on that level?
Elder Berean, let me answer you as best I can according to that question. Here we go. Now, the Israel that I would say, now I can't remove when God said I'm gonna bless those that bless thee. I can't remove that. But
if you don't know who they are, he don't even know that's the ultimate for Gazy in the Bible to get money. I can't tell you, I'm good. I don't even want to. And it's too late. I gotta leave this video. I gotta get off this live.
I gotta jump off of here, Berean.
All right, man. All right, appreciate it. All right, go ahead.
But Dunamis asked the setup question. He asked a good question. And
I know he asked a good question because he's making you think. Because Christianity is saying in large part there's neither male nor female. We don't even care who Israel is. 99% of Christianity don't care about Israel because then they got nothing to do with Bible, prophecy, fulfillment. We in Christ. There's no male, no female. Christ is the end of. Hey, this is all garbage talk. But now we talk about a blessing. Now we talk about so now you see the importance of. You think there's some importance in bringing out who Israel is?
No, Berean. I'm trying to answer the brother. The Dunamis asked a good question when it goes back to saying, "I'm going to bless those that bless thee." You can't remove that in the scripture. You can't remove that. So
Dunamis, I'm walking away. You handle this. You handle this one right here. You started it.
My answer to that question would be whoever is claiming to be Israel.
We can't. We can't. I'm sorry.
But watch it. But let me clarify. Let me clarify my answer. Okay. Now, I'm saying the Israel that is not. Now this gonna really get twisted right here. Any Israel that is not confessing Yeshua as the Messiah, they have the Antichrist spirit, and that's even non-Israel. Even non-Israel.
I can't go on no more. We can't go on no more like this. We can't go on like this.
Let me give you my answer, Berean.
You love them folk. You've been over there. You done went down in the water.
Yeah.
The light-skinned folk, the little hat people baptized you.
No.
The little hat people bring you in. Didn't come on here and further chat. Hey, yo, I'm good, y'all. I gotta leave.
Berean, the little hat people didn't baptize me. A Christian white bottle baptized me. I
thought he had a little hat on.
No. Now, watch this. The little hat people that was a believer. Now, a believing little hat people. Don't get it twisted. A believing little hat people with also a black bottle Israelite Jewish. So I had two Jews that ordained me. The little hat white bottle and I'm saying that because you said that, and the black bottle believers.
Let's debate. I ain't scared of none of y'all. I ain't backing up for none of y'all. Going in on every one of y'all. Hot point to Draco. I'm about to let 100 off. Let's debate. This where the stars shine bright. It's time to decide where your side of the line is. This is our life, so please be reminded. Everything you say, we will rewind it. Highlight your soundbite when we find it. Hindsight, your eyesight is not blinded. My life and timeline, a real diamond. To go find you someone to co-sign. It's on site, you low life with no light. And I don't write to go with your neck bow tight. And there's no light with every day that go by. And I don't mind being the guy that you don't like. In high demand, I supply the web. I'm a fly guy, no spider web. You see a flight of stairs, there's an idol there. They won't work for life, but they'll hire death. But I'd rather listen to my higher self. Meditate and take me to a higher realm. If the education board diagram give me funny feelings in my diaphragm. And the medication full of fire ants. Council culture, counsel your entire camp. Lead by example, they responding to me, reading every letter like an eye exam. My descendants sing entire hymns. My ideals cry from the highest tier. Drug addicts weeping, that's the highest tier. But there's a need for knowledge, that's when I appear. And they do not teach us in college, they make us an offer and see we compete with the scholars. But we are not bothered by mammon, it's all in the fan. Just imagine the famine affecting your family. Global pandemic infecting your family. Satellite image can't pick up humanity. Newer technology, purpose abolish the growing the flowers organically. This where the scientists intersect with desiredness, intellect and the dialect. Like upgrade biotech, and we ain't even read your bio yet. You way up there nose bleeding. You done make it to the postseason. I beat you, it wasn't close neither. Now I'm back to hunt you like your old demon. Your entire premise worn out like old sneakers, blown out like old speakers, thrown out like old leaders. Pay attention what the soul teaches. Now that the price of gold cheaper, but the gold deeper this season, folks.